Suddenly, a tall figure in a black cloak stepped out from behind a tree. "You shouldn't be here and leave before it is too late." Then, the figure turned and disappeared into the darkness. Alex had always been curious about small towns. When his friend Maya suggested they visit for the winter festival, he was eager to go. Then they drove through snowy roads that led to the town hidden in the mountains. The houses looked like little gingerbread cookies and everything seemed to sparkle. But there was something strange about it, and something that Alex couldn't explain. As they drove deeper into the town, Alex noticed how quiet everything was because the streets were empty, even though the festival was just days away. The decorations hung on every lamppost, and the colorful lights shone brightly. But the people, there were fewer of them than he expected. Those who were there didn't smile, and their faces looked serious, even scared, like they were waiting for something bad to happen. "Isn't it a little quiet for a festival?" Alex asked, and tried to understand the strange feeling in the air. Maya didn't seem to notice and said, "Come on, it is just a small town. Everyone is probably getting ready for the big day." Then Ben laughed and said, "Yeah, it is probably just different from the city. Don't overthink it, Alex." But Alex couldn't shake the feeling because it was like the town was holding its breath. As they walked to the town square, Alex saw people talking in hushed voices. When they saw him, they quickly looked away. One old woman, who had been sweeping snow from her doorstep, crossed herself and muttered something under her breath. Alex stared at her, but she was already gone. The mayor, a tall man in a dark suit, appeared in the square with a big smile. But his eyes didn't match his smile, and there was something cold in them. "Welcome to our town. I hope you are excited for the winter festival. This year, we have something special planned. I am sure you will love it." His voice was smooth, but Alex felt his skin crawl. "What kind of tradition?" The mayor's smile widened and said, "That is a surprise for later, but I am sure it will be unforgettable." Alex tried to ignore the unease in his chest because the whole town felt like it was hiding something. Later that evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, Alex went for a walk alone. He needed to clear his head because the town square looked different in the dark. Shadows seemed to stretch longer, and the lights twinkled like stars trapped in glass. Then he heard it, a soft voice speaking from the shadows. He tried to get closer, but the voices stopped. He moved a little further and heard one of the voices again, louder and more urgent. "Are you sure we have to do it this year?" a man's voice said with fear. "It is the only way," another voice responded, colder and darker. "The Winter Witch demands it, and the sacrifice must be made." As soon as Alex heard, his heart raced. Sacrifice? Winter Witch? His mind tried to understand it, but it only made him feel colder. He stepped closer, but the voices grew quieter and then disappeared. Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind hit him and cut through his jacket. The air turned freezing cold, and he shivered. His breath turned to fog in the air, and for a moment, he thought he saw a shadow dart behind a building. His feet felt heavy like the ground was pulling him down. He didn't want to go further. His body told him to run, but his curiosity kept him going. Then, he glanced back, and he saw the mayor standing just at the edge of the light. His smile was still wide, but his eyes were darker now. He watched Alex for a long moment before disappearing into the shadows. Alex couldn't breathe because of the cold, the voices, the shadows. It all felt wrong. He needed to get back to the others to find safety, but every step he took felt like he was getting closer to something he didn't understand. Then, he turned quickly and almost ran back to the inn. But as he looked back one last time, another figure appeared in the darkness. A tall, thin woman, dressed in white, with eyes as black as night. Her face was pale and her mouth twisted in a strange smile. She was standing by the town square and was watching him. Alex's heart skipped a beat, and then he turned and ran back to the inn. The next morning, Alex couldn't shake the cold feeling from the night before because the pale woman with dark eyes still haunted him. Something felt wrong in the town, and he needed answers. "Maya! Ben!" Alex said, and his voice was serious. "We need to go to the library because there has to be something about the Winter Witch." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Are you still thinking about last night? It was probably just a story." Then Alex replied, "I don't know. There is something wrong here, and I can feel it." Ben shrugged. "All right, but if we find nothing, I am laughing at you." The library was old and dusty, with wooden floors that creaked under their feet. The librarian, an elderly woman, looked up but said nothing. It felt like she was watching them. Alex led the way, and his heart was pounding as he scanned the shelves for something about the Winter Witch. After a few minutes, he found what he was looking for, a thick and leather-bound journal. "Here," Alex said, pulling it down. "This might be it." Maya looked at it and said, "It looks really old. Are you sure it's safe to open it?" "We have to," Alex said, and opened it carefully. The pages were faded and some of the words were hard to read. As Alex read aloud, his voice trembled because the journal told of a curse. It was about a powerful being, the Winter Witch, who once ruled the town. The witch wasn't just a ghost. She thrived on fear and grew stronger every winter. Then, the town made a terrible deal during a harsh winter to survive. In exchange for survival, Alex read and said, the townspeople agreed to give the Winter Witch a gift every year. This gift was chosen during the winter festival, and they offered someone as a sacrifice, and in return, the witch protected the town from the worst winters. Alex kept reading, and the journal explained that the curse would continue until the pact was fulfilled. But there was more. The witch's return, Alex read and said, "It is marked by the full moon, and the last of the sacrifice will be chosen from within." Alex's heart raced. Chosen from within? What does that mean? Before he could read more, a presence behind him made him turn because the mayor stood in the doorway, and his wide smile was as unsettling as ever. Then, the mayor said smoothly, "I see you have found the old journal. It is quite a piece of history, isn't it?" Maya looked at Alex nervously and said, "We were just looking up some history for our project." The mayor chuckled softly. "Of course. Just be careful with what you uncover because some truths are dangerous." With that, the mayor left the library and left an uncomfortable silence behind. Then, Alex turned to Maya and Ben. "Do you think he knows more than he's letting on?" Maya nodded. "I don't know. But I didn't like the way he looked at the journal." Alex turned back to the journal and his mind was racing. What did chosen from within mean? Who would be the sacrifice? And why did the full moon matter? As he flipped through the pages, Alex stopped suddenly because he found a drawing, crude but clear. It was of a pale woman with black eyes and surrounded by snow. At the bottom of the page, the words read, "She comes when the moon is full. Beware the one she chooses." Suddenly, the hair on the back of Alex's neck stood up because the full moon was almost here. Alex couldn't stop thinking about the Winter Witch, the mayor's warning, and the strange talk of sacrifices. He knew he had to learn the truth. "We need to talk to the old hermit," Alex said. "He is the only one who knows the real history of this town." Maya and Ben exchanged looks because they knew something was wrong too, and they couldn't ignore it anymore. The old hermit lived on the edge of town, in a house that looked like it was falling apart. The roof was sagging, and strange objects, rusted weapons, old dolls, and animal bones, hung from the trees. Alex felt a chill as they got closer to the door. Maya knocked, and after a long pause, it creaked open. Then they saw the old man with wild gray hair and sharp eyes standing there. "You want to know the truth?" the hermit asked in a rough voice. "I have been waiting for someone to ask." Then, he stepped aside and let them in. The house smelled musty and smoky, filled with old books, animal pelts, and strange jars. The walls were covered in mysterious symbols. It was clear the hermit knew things most people didn't. "Sit," the hermit said, and led them to a table. "You have been asking questions that shouldn't be asked. But now that you're here, you need to know the truth." Alex sat down, and his heart was racing because the hermit was the one who could explain everything. "Do you know the Winter Witch?" the hermit asked suddenly, and his eyes were fixed on Alex. Alex nodded. "Yes. We have heard about her. She is a curse, right? The town made a deal with her long ago?" The hermit laughed bitterly. "A curse? No. She's real, and the town made a deal with her years ago. They promised her a gift every winter, but the price always grows, and now the town is bound to her." Alex's throat went dry. "What do you mean by bound?" "The Winter Witch feeds on fear," the hermit continued. "The festival. It is not a celebration because it is a ritual to keep her satisfied. Every year, someone must be chosen, and someone must be sacrificed. And this year, it is worse than ever." Maya trembled. "But why a sacrifice? What happens if we don't give her one?" The hermit's eyes darkened. "If you don't, she will take more than just a life, and she will take the soul of this town. The witch feeds on the fear of everyone who participates. When the moon is full, she will rise again, and nothing can stop her." Alex felt sick because the townspeople had always known. The festival was a trap. And now the witch was coming to claim what was owed. "We have to stop her," Alex said. "Is there anything we can do?" The hermit shook his head. "You can leave now, and that's the only way to escape. Leave now, before it's too late." Alex, Maya, and Ben exchanged glances because it was too late to leave. They needed to know more, and they couldn't run. "We can't leave," Alex said. "We need to stop the witch." The hermit's eyes widened in fear, and then he grabbed Alex's arm. "Don't trust the mayor, and he is part of the witch's plan." Alex froze. The mayor? Which is why he had always felt something was off about him. "Why?" Alex whispered. The hermit looked around quickly. "There is no time to explain, and just don't trust him." As they left the hermit's house, Alex heard something like whispering on the wind. He turned, but there was no one there. But he felt watched, and his heart raced. Was it the witch, or something worse? The moon was full tonight, and the Winter Witch was closer than ever. The sound of laughter and music filled the streets as the festival began. Alex noticed the strange costumes. People dressed as animals, mythical creatures, and with masks that made their faces look twisted. Everything felt like an old fairy tale, but something didn't feel right because the smiles seemed forced, and the laughter didn't sound real. Maya felt the same. "Do you feel it too? Because something's wrong." Alex nodded. "Yeah, it is like they are pretending to be happy. Everyone is hiding something." As they walked through the town square, the temperature suddenly dropped. Alex looked around, but no one else seemed to notice. "Why is it so cold?" Ben asked, and rubbing his arms. "I don't know," Alex answered. "But it is more than just the cold, and something is wrong." The laughter and music grew louder, but Alex felt uneasy because the shadows between the buildings seemed darker. Sometimes he saw people glance around, eyes wide with fear, before quickly turning back to their activities. "It is like they are trapped, but too afraid to stop," Maya whispered. As evening came, the festival lights flickered. Alex noticed figures in the crowd, people in long, dark cloaks, and their faces were hidden. One of them looked at him, and Alex felt a cold shiver down his spine. "Did you see them?" Maya asked. "Yeah," Alex said, and felt nervous. "They don't belong here." Ben spoke in a low voice. "This feels like a nightmare." Suddenly, they heard the mayor's voice, and he stood at the center of the crowd and smiling widely. But Alex noticed that his smile was too perfect. His eyes were cold, as if he didn't care about the festival. Then, before dark, Alex saw the mayor slip away from the crowd and disappear into the trees. Where is he going? Alex wondered. I don't know, but we should follow him, Maya said. Then, the three friends moved quietly toward the edge of the festival and into the dark woods. The trees swayed eerily in the wind. As they entered the woods, Alex heard a soft whisper, like someone calling his name. He looked around, but no one was there. Did you hear that? Maya asked, and looking worried. Yeah, Alex said, and his voice shaky. It came from over there. Suddenly, a tall figure in a black cloak stepped out from behind a tree, and Alex froze because the figure's face was hidden under a hood, and it moved like it were watching them. You shouldn't be here, the figure whispered, and its voice was low and dangerous. Alex's heart raced. Who was this person? How did they know they were following the mayor? Before he could respond, the figure turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Alex and his friends standing in eerie silence. But the voice still echoed in Alex's mind as he turned back toward the town, realizing that no one in the town could be trusted. The mayor, the festival, the whispers. It was all connected to something much darker. And now, it was too late to turn back. The wind howled through the trees as Alex, Maya, and Ben walked deeper into the forest. The snow was thick and crunching under their feet. The woods were quiet, as if the forest was holding its breath. Alex's heart raced, and his breath turned to mist in the cold air. Where is he? Maya whispered, and looking around nervously. I don't know, Alex replied, and scanning the trees, because the shadows seemed to move strangely, like something was watching them. Suddenly, Ben stopped and said, Wait, and I think I see something. Then they hurried forward to a clearing where the snow was smooth and flat. In the middle was a large patch of ice, glowing faintly under the moonlight, and strange symbols were carved into the ice. What is this place? Maya asked, and her voice was shaking. It looks like an old pagan shrine, Ben said. Maybe the townspeople used it for rituals. Suddenly, the ground shook, and the symbols on the ice began to glow brighter. With a loud crack, the ice shattered beneath their feet. Ben quickly pulled Maya away as the ground split open. Alex stumbled back, and then he looked down and saw frozen bodies, and there were dozens of them that was trapped in the ice. Their faces were twisted in fear and pain as if they had been frozen in terror. Then Ben spoke in a trembling voice. These people, they were sacrifices. Suddenly a voice echoed from the darkness. You have awakened her. Alex's blood ran cold because the voice was close but no one was there. He looked at Maya and Ben and they were both terrified. We need to leave, Alex said. Now! But before they could move, the wind picked up and slammed into Alex. Alex collapsed in the snow, but when he opened his eyes, he saw her, a tall woman in black, with glowing blue eyes. Her skin was pale, and her white hair swirled around her like snow. The Winter Witch. Alex's heart stopped, because this was the one the hermit had warned them about. The one who cursed the town. The Winter Witch stepped closer, and a cruel smile on her lips. You should not have come. Alex tried to move, but his body was frozen. The witch raised her hand, and the air crackled with power. As she took another step, Alex felt the cold tighten around his chest. Was this the end? Would he become another sacrifice to the Winter Witch? Alex felt the icy fear close in as the Winter Witch stepped closer. Her cold blue eyes pierced through him, and the frost around her shimmered like death itself. Every breath Alex took felt colder and sharper than before. You are too late, the witch's voice echoed, calm and chilling, like the wind through bare trees. This year's festival will fulfill the ancient pact, and it was the pact you have disturbed. Alex tried to speak, but his throat was tight with fear. What did she mean by the fulfillment of the pact? What was happening tonight? This town has a long history, the witch continued, and her smile was cruel. A deal was made long ago. The townspeople thought they could survive the harsh winters, but their survival came at a cost because they gave me what I needed to live. Fear. I feed on fear. When the winter is harsh and the snow thick, the people are filled with fear, and that fear feeds me. I grow stronger with every terrified breath. Alex's mind raced. How could this be real? The town's winter festival had always seemed like a fun celebration, but now it seemed like a twisted ritual to keep the witch's curse alive. And the time has come again with the offering, the witch said with satisfaction. Alex felt his stomach drop. The offering? What did she mean by that? The witch laughed coldly. With a flick of her wrist, a freezing wind howled through the trees, and frost spread over the ground and covered everything in ice. Maya screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the wind. Ben stepped back and he was terrified. Then the witch's voice boomed. This is not just a festival because it is a ritual. Every year a sacrifice must be made to keep the pact alive, and someone must die to keep me strong. Alex's head spun. A sacrifice? Who? Why? The witch tilted her head and considered. The people have always given one of their own to make me strong. They have no choice, just like you now. Ben tried to run and slipped on the ice, but the witch's cold laugh stopped him. The ground shifted, ice rising like walls around and trapping them. Alex's panic grew because he felt like the ice was wrapping around him and holding him in place. He tried to move, but couldn't. The witch raised her hands, and Alex felt her power surround him, cold and suffocating. You cannot escape because your fear feeds me, and you cannot escape. The darkness was suffocating, and the icy grip of the witch's power kept Alex, Maya, and Ben trapped. As Alex struggled to think of a way out, footsteps crunched through the snow, slow and deliberate. Alex squinted against the freezing wind as the figure carrying the lantern stepped closer. His heart dropped, because it was the mayor. "Mayor!" Alex called, and his voice was cracking with a mix of relief and confusion. "Help us! The witch!" But the mayor's expression stopped Alex's plea cold. His face was grim and his eyes were hard. The lantern's light cast eerie shadows, and something about his presence felt wrong. "You shouldn't have come," the mayor said quietly, and his voice was carrying over the howling wind. "What are you doing here?" Maya asked, and her tone sharp with suspicion. "I'm doing what I must," the mayor replied. Alex's heart sank as realization dawned. "You are working with her, and you are helping the witch," the mayor sighed. "You don't understand because my family made the pact with her generations ago. It's the only way the town survives the harsh winters. Without the ritual, the entire town would freeze to death." "That's not survival," Maya spat. "That is slavery, and you have been sacrificing innocent people for years." The mayor's face hardened. "I have kept the town safe. The people may not know the full truth, but they accept the ritual because it is what keeps them alive." "They don't know the truth because you have been lying to them," Ben shouted. The mayor ignored him, and his gaze was shifting toward the shadows. "I warned you not to interfere. Now the witch is angry, and the pact is at risk." Alex's blood ran cold because the mayor's betrayal had sealed their fate, and now the witch was more powerful than ever. The wind howled, and the ice crept closer, tightening around them like a noose. "You cannot escape," the witch said, and her voice was echoing in Alex's mind. "Your fear feeds me, and your fear makes me strong." As the darkness closed in again, Alex knew they were running out of time. The mayor's betrayal had left them stranded in the witch's frozen grip, but Alex refused to give up. He had to find a way to break the curse before it was too late. Now they had barely escaped the witch's grasp because the ground cracked open under them, and a cold chill ran through their bodies. Icy fingers reached up from the dark hole and grabbed Alex's legs with great strength. The witch's voice echoed in the storm, cold and mocking. "You cannot escape me." The darkness of the hole seemed to take everything. Alex's body was being pulled toward it. His heart raced in fear, and panic filled him as he was dragged closer to the edge. The air was freezing, and the witch's magic made it hard for him to move. But then, something inside Alex changed. He thought of Maya and Ben, his friends who had been with him through every challenge. They were still there and pulled him back. Their hands slipped on the ice as the storm raged around them. "Maya! Ben!" Alex shouted, and his voice was barely heard over the wind. "You have to hold on. We're not giving up." Maya looked scared, but there was determination in her eyes. She reached down and grabbed Alex's arm with all the strength she had. "You are not going alone, Alex. We will fight this together." Ben, shaking but strong, held onto Alex and helped pull him back from the edge. The snowstorm blew fiercely, and the witch's whispers filled the air. But Alex didn't let fear control him. With all his strength, he planted his feet in the snow, grabbed Maya and Ben, and they pulled together with everything they had. With one last effort, Alex pulled himself backward with all his strength. Suddenly, the witch's grip loosened. For a moment, the dark hole seemed to pull back. Maya and Ben managed to pull Alex away just as the ground closed with a loud crack. The icy fingers let go, and the storm screamed in anger. They fell back, out of breath, the wind still howling, but the danger was over for now. They had escaped because they never gave up, and their bond, determination, and refusal to give in to fear had saved them. But the final ceremony was almost here. The witch had lost this battle, but the war was far from over because they had to face the final ritual. Alex, Maya, and Ben stood at the edge of the ritual site and faced the Winter Witch. Her cold blue eyes glowed bright, and her power felt overwhelming. "This is it," Maya whispered, and her voice was trembling. "We have to end this now, and we can't let her win." Ben nodded, and his eyes wide with fear. "But how?" "She's too powerful, and we are not strong enough." Alex focused and tried to clear his mind. The witch was feeding on their fear and grew stronger by the second. The storm only got worse, as if the witch's power was turning the world against them. "You think you can stop me?" The witch's voice echoed through the storm. "Your fear feeds me." Her mocking laughter made Alex's heart race. He looked at Maya and Ben, their faces filled with fear. The witch was using their anxiety against them. "Maya," Alex said, trying to stay calm, "what's your worst fear? You have to face it." Maya's face went pale. I can't. What if I hurt you?" "You have to fight it," Alex urged. "Don't let her control you." Maya nodded, but Alex could see the doubt in her eyes. The witch's laughter grew louder, and Alex turned to Ben, who was shaking. "Ben, what about you?" Alex asked. "What are you afraid of?" Ben looked at him and was panic in his eyes. "I am always worried. What if I'm not enough? What if I can't protect us?" Alex pushed his own fear aside. "You can do this because we have to face it together." Then, in the middle of the storm, Alex remembered something suddenly. The town's history held the answer. The witch's curse could only be broken with the blood of a descendant of the original pact holder, the mayor. "The mayor's blood is the key," Alex said urgently. "We need it to break the curse." Maya and Ben stared at him in confused. "The mayor?" Ben asked in shocked. Alex nodded. "His blood is the only thing that can stop the witch, and we have no time." Maya's face went pale. "But we can't just..." Alex didn't want to do it, but they had no choice because the storm grew stronger, the witch's voice echoing in their minds. Time was running out. The mayor stood nearby and sneered at them. "You think you can stop this? It's too late because the witch is too strong." Alex stepped forward. "We need your blood. It is the only way." The mayor's face twisted into a sneer. "You think you can make me?" Before Alex could move, the ground shook violently. The storm howled louder, and the witch's presence grew. Snow and ice blasted into the air, and her figure grew larger, her eyes glowing with unnatural light. Just as Alex reached for the mayor, the ground cracked open. The witch's icy hand shot out, grabbing his ankle. "You cannot escape your fate," she whispered, as the earth shook beneath them. The wind howled, biting into Alex's face as he tried to keep his footing. The ground trembled under the storm's force, but Alex felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the moment they had been fighting for. The ritual site was destroyed, and the mayor's blood had stained the earth, breaking the curse. Maya stood beside him, and her face was pale and full of fear. "Is it over?" she asked quietly, and her voice was shaky. Alex hoped it was, but something felt off. The storm had calmed, and the snow no longer swirled around them. The air was strangely quiet, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the witch's power was still lingering. "Where's Ben?" Maya suddenly asked, her voice breaking the silence. Alex's heart dropped. Ben had been with them moments ago, but now he was nowhere to be seen. The wind had stopped, and the snow was thick on the ground, but no sign of Ben. "Ben!" Alex shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the quiet. "Maya, stay here," Alex said urgently, scanning the area. But there was no trace of their friend. Fear crept into his chest as he turned back to Maya. "Where is he?" "I don't know," she whispered, trembling. "He was right behind us." Suddenly, a whisper on the wind made Alex freeze. It was the witch's voice. "I will return." His heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the witch hadn't been defeated after all? Had they truly broken the curse? Or was this just the beginning? Maya looked at him, fear in her eyes. "Did you hear that?" Alex nodded. "We have to leave. Now." They hurried through the trees, heading for the town, but the feeling of being followed never left. The whispers grew louder as they neared the edge of the woods, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the witch's power was still there, waiting for them. "I will return," the witch's voice echoed again. Alex's heart raced as they left the forest behind. The curse may have been broken, but its grip on them wasn't over yet. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Please share this video with your friends and family too. Thanks.